Chapter 36, Tactics of Motion. When the lights came up, the fatigue felt familiar, a weight they could live with. Bash rolled his shoulders as he sat up. The soreness was there, but it was no longer sharp, no longer the kind that made him wonder if his body was breaking. It was the ache of adaptation. Across the room, Richter yawned and stretched until his joints popped. Still hurts, but I don't hate it. Naira looked up from where she was adjusting the collar of her training suit. That's as close to optimism as you've ever sounded. Don't ruin it, he said. Karen was already dressed, hair tied back tight. Get used to it, she said. We'll be doing this for a while. Recovery cycle within expected parameters, as he said in Bash's head. Tone neutral. So we're improving, adapting, she coughed. See, Dad, improvement implies permanence. You always know how to keep things uplifting, he thought, pushing to his feet. They left the dorm together. The corridor hum matched the steady rhythm of their boots, and when the coordination facility doors parted, the sight inside was exactly what they expected, the same divided arena, half fine motor precision and half gross motor endurance. The same challenge waiting to break them again. Jouk stood on the raised platform, hands clasped behind his back. Begin. The next 5 days blurred into a relentless cycle of movement, data, and exhaustion. 10 rotations per day, alternating tasks until the world dissolved into rhythm. Jump, balance, strike, reach, hold, react. By the third day, Bash stopped counting the rounds. His body moved out of instant CT, the kind built from repetition and quiet pain. Richter's muttering had faded into focus, and Naira's sharp movements became fluid enough to look practiced. Even Taryn's precision steadied, her scores rising with each loop. Bash didn't feel stronger, exactly, just less fragile. Each morning his muscles protested less, and by the 5th day he could complete a full rotation without trembling. SC's adjustments came fewer and farther between, more like reminders than corrections. Response time improved 12%, she noted. I'll take it, he thought, lungs burning. Endurance threshold extended by 6% as well. So basically, I suffer longer. Accuracy remains inconsistent during fatigue. And there's the bad news. By the 6th evening, when the holo monitors flickered through the final readouts, the average hovered in the mid-30s. It wasn't good, but it was the first real upward curve in days. The faint stir of optimism in the group felt almost alien after so much monotony. Even Jouk's silence at the end of the session felt less like disappointment and more like approval. The next morning, Jouk was waiting when they arrived. Today, he said, voice even, 6 rotations only. A ripple passed through the room. Surprise, disbelief, maybe even relief. Jouk raised his hand. Do not mistake this for lenience. You will give everything in each cycle. Treat every motion as final. Pace yourselves for endurance, not survival. The first round burned fast and hot, every Sparta pushing harder now that the end was measurable. By the 4th rotation, the exhaustion high, but no one slowed. The hum of the whole systems matched the pulse in Bash's ears, fast, steady, mechanical. When the 6th rotation ended, silence filled the arena. Dozens of chests rose and fell in unison. The screens flickered with their results, percentages higher than they'd ever seen. The average crossed 50. It wasn't 80, but it was momentum. Richter leaned against the barrier, gasping. 6 rounds. I might actually live to hate this tomorrow. Naira smirked faintly. You sound proud of yourself. Pride's all I've got left, he said. Follow, Jouk ordered. He led them through a side passage few had noticed before. The air grew cooler as they walked, charged with static. The corridor opened into a vast, dim chamber lined with floating holoscreens and luminous resonance hers that hummed faintly, drifting like glass threads in the air. This, Jouk said, stepping to the center, is where you learn to think before you strike. The lights dimmed. A holographic terrain flickered to life in the center of the room. Mountains, forests, open plains, all shifting under invisible code. Then came the shapes, translucent outlines of beasts, moving in patterns too fluid to be entirely natural. Your physical training prepares your body, Jouk said. This prepares your purpose. In the field, strategy determines survival. Instinct alone kills. He gestured, and one of the holographic creatures expanded into full detail. A massive, 4-winged predator with translucent membranes and luminous veins that pulse like molten glass. Its body shimmered with spectral light, each wing beat throwing off thin arcs of static energy. For aerial beasts, never scatter, Jouk said. His voice was calm, deliberate, every word landing with the weight of command. Anchor your center of gravity. The moment you disperse, you lose control of altitude dominance. Draw its path down, not away. Ground is control. The holographic creature swooped, talons gouging through digital sand. Several holographic Sparters formed beneath it, pale green silhouettes flickering faintly in the dim light. One stayed central, a cleared decoy. Two more circled opposite flanks, forming a tight triangle. When it dies, that's your window, Jouk continued. Do not strike its wings first, strike the joints. Break flight before blood. A windless target cannot retreat. The hologram replayed the sequence in slow motion. One Sparta pivoted low, a flash of energy from their palm cutting through the creature's shoulder joint. The beast crumpled midair, slamming into the terrain. Flight predators rely on momentum, Jouk said. Disrupt momentum, and you remove superiority. He swept his hand, and the scene shifted. The four-winged predator disintegrated into a wave of sand. Beneath it, something else stirred, a burrower. The ground rippled like water. A segmented creature the size of a transport crawler pushed through the surface, its movement so fast it seemed to swim through the terrain. Burrowers sense stillness, Jouk said. They track through density resonance, every vibration, every pause in the pattern of movement. Static targets become prey. The holographic Sparters are heated in sequence. Some scattered, others froze. Those who froze first vanished from the field as the creature surged upward, engulfing them in one swift motion. Motion disrupts their mapping, he explained. Continuous displacement confuses their pathfinding. You do not need speed, only unpredictability. Change your rhythm. Move between steps. Vary weight distribution. The hologram slowed again to show a Sparter deliberately breaking cadence, rolling and striking in irregular intervals. The creature's trajectory missed by meters, plunging back underground before being cut apart by a timed resonance burst from the flank. Remember, stability kills you. Movement saves you. Another gesture from Jouk, and the terrain shifted once more. The sands dissolved into a crystalline plateau, jagged and sharp. Dozens of smaller forms emerged from cracks and crevices, moving in eerie unison. A swarm. Pack or hive types, Jouk said, require synchronization. Not from them, from you. The holographic swarm surged toward the Sparters, a wave of light and motion. The first holographic Sparter fired a resonance burst too early. It lit up the entire swarm, drawing every creature to them at once. The hologram flared red, a simulated death. Never isolate your burst, Jouk said. Overlap. Time your resonance with others. A single attack attracts the swarm, a chain confuses it. The sequence replayed, this time with precise overlap, burst firing in rhythm, cascading outward. Each pulse redirected the swarm's trajectory until it scattered against itself, collapsing into chaos. I best communicate through resonance echoes, he explained. Too many simultaneous frequencies, and their structure breaks down. Exploit confusion, not strength. Strike when their cohesion collapses. He turned slightly, and the projection zoomed out to reveal a larger formation. A squad of Sparters holding position in a tight defensive circle as the remaining swarm fragments disintegrated around them. Teamwork is not courtesy, Jouk said. It's survival protocol. He paused, then with a flick of his wrist, the swarm faded. The terrain morphed into an open clearing under a dim red sky. From the far edge, figures appeared, humanoid in shape, their eyes glowing faintly, their movements deliberate. Intelligent foes. They think like you, Jouk said quietly, which makes them more dangerous than anything you faced. The holographic Sparters advanced cautiously. The humanoid entities moved in perfect counter-rhythm, evading attacks before they even came. Intelligent opponents track intent, he said. They read breath, gaze, stance, hesitation. Your focus gives you away before you act. One holographic Sparta shifted their shoulders slightly, preparing to lunge. The opponent struck first, impaling them in a flash of motion. Hide your rhythm, Jouk said. Control your breathing. Do not let anticipation show in your muscles. Every thought is a signal. Every pause is a tell. He turned the playback to slow motion again, the Sparters' outlines glowing faintly with each micro-movement, every small flicker of tension. They see what you telegraph. Stop telling them your story before you write it. He changed gestures again, bringing up a new simulation, a group of Sparters surrounding a much larger, humanoid full radiating power. Multiple intelligent targets demand deception, Jouk said. Force them to react to an illusion. Create a false pattern, a feint. Aggro is an illusion as powerful as damage. Draw it, then abandon it. The simulation played through. One Sparta projected a pulse of high resonance to mimic vulnerability, pulling the attention of three attackers while two others countered from their blind spots. When executed correctly, misdirection is indistinguishable from victory. He finished. The projection expanded one last time, showing a massive battlefield simulation filled with dozens of Sparta units coordinating across different terrains, aerial, subterranean, pack, and intelligent simultaneously. This, Jouk said, is the battlefield as you will face it. Not pure strength, but complexity. Every threat adapts, every mistake multiplies. He stepped closer to the edge of the platform, gaze sweeping across the group. Support and damage follow the center. The center shifts with the threat. Learn to recognize when you are the focus and when you are not. Hesitation is failure. Panic is death. Overconfidence is extinction. The Spartans stood silent, bathed in the blue light of the simulation as the hologram cycled through formation after formation. Each replay grew faster, more chaotic, the room alive with simulated movement. Minutes blurred into hours. What began as simple examples turned into complex battlefield. De-orchestration. Dozens of overlapping strategies, each tailored to a specific terrain or threat. Jouk adjusted parameters constantly, shifting weather, light, and density to test their comprehension. The Spartans barely moved, absorbing every word, every demonstration, until fatigue dulled even the will to blink. By the time the final projection faded from the air, they'd witnessed entire campaigns rise and collapse in silence. Jouk finally lowered his hand. The projections faded, leaving only the soft hum of the tethers. Every third day, he said, we replace extended rotations with tactical instruction. Your minds must evolve as your bodies do. Learn to adapt. Learn to anticipate. The battlefield will not wait for you to understand it. He let the silence hang for a long moment. T. Dismissed. Back in the corridor, Richter rubbed the back of his neck. So basically, run, jump, and don't die. Nair shook her head. You really missed the point. Bash didn't answer. He was still replaying Jouk's words in his mind. Instant kills. You seem unsettled, S.E. said. He watched the last of the holograms fade. Their light still burned into his vision. He's not training us to fight beasts, Bash thought. He's training us to fight people. Correction. S.E. replied after a brief pause. He was training you to fight intelligent life, those capable of strategy, communication, and adaptation. The distinction is critical. Bash's jaw tightened. Still sounds like people. By function, yes. By species, irrelevant. He didn't answer. As they stepped into the lift, the hum of the machinery filled the silence between them. Yeah, he murmured quietly, almost to himself. I'm starting to notice a pattern too. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments if you would like a better understanding of Bash's origin and family. Check out my book Before the Genesis. It tells the story of Kyle and Abby and has some lead up right into this novel. Rundock, Chapter 37, The Questions You Ask When the Lights Rose. The soreness barely registered. What had once felt like punishment now felt routine, predictable, even tolerable. Bash sat up, rotating his shoulders. There was still heaviness in his limbs, but it was the kind that came from use, not strain. Richter groaned from the bunk above him. I think my bones have learned the schedule. Nair tightened the strap on her wrist brace. That's called muscle memory. Yeah, well, mine's traumatic, he said. Taryn's voice carried from the far side of the room, calm as always. You're adapting. Stop complaining and start moving. He's improving. S.C. noted in Bash's mind. His endurance curve has flattened. Complaining is simply how he ventilates. That's one way to put it, Bash thought, smirking faintly as he stood. They made their way to the coordination facility. The air was thick with the hum of the Low systems already booting up, lines of blue light snaking across the floor. For the next 2 days, nothing changed. 10 rotations each day. Endless repetition. Fine motor followed by gross followed by fine. The rhythm had become mechanical, push until failure, reset, push again. By the time the third day arrived, the routine finally shifted. Jouk was already waiting at the platform, arms folded behind his back. The walls around him shimmered faintly, the lighting dimmed to a cool violet hue. 6 rotations, he said simply. The relief across the room was visible but short-lived. 6 rotations at Jouk's command likely felt longer than 10 under anyone else's. Still, by the end of the day, the difference showed. Cleaner execution, tighter coordination, fewer resets. Their group average climbed into the mid-50s. Not enough to pass, but the data trend pointed upward. Progress. In Jouk's world, that was currency. When the final rotation ended, he didn't dismiss them. Instead, the violet lighting deepened, casting the arena in faint shadow. The air changed. Bash could feel it, less electric, more controlled. Jouk stepped forward, gaze cutting through the rows of exhausted Spartans. Phase 3. Module 2, he said. Cognitive integration, interface communication. A ripple of murmurs passed through the Spartans. They all had system cores. They all spoke to them, but none of them had been told how to. This is not about connection, Jouk continued. Connection you were born with. This is about clarity. You are linked to your system core, but that does not mean it understands you. The quality of response depends on the quality of the question. The room fell silent. Bash felt SC stir faintly in the back of his mind, a quiet hum like restrained laughter. Finally, she said, someone teaching the basics. You sound impressed, Bash thought. Momentarily, Jouk motioned, and the air above the floor filled with faint blue holograms of neural pathways and digital overlays, each showing a Spartan's body surrounded by a cloud of data points. Your system core sees everything, Jouk said. Every heartbeat, every neuron firing, every fluctuation in resonance. But it does not think for you. It interprets what it can quantify. If you fail to define the problem, it cannot define a solution. SC's voice surfaced in Bash's mind, not loud, but sharp. Correction. Most system cores see everything. The connection between my diagnostic arrays and your somatic systems remains partial, she said. Residual corruption from the anomaly. I can read your mental activity with full fidelity, but only estimate your physical state. He frowned slightly. Then why did you call yourself self-core instead of system core? A brief pause, then her tone softened, almost reflective. Because I am not part of the system anymore. The designation system core implies centralized integration with the nexus. I am detached. Jouk pointed toward one of the projections. A Spartan stood on a simulated ridge overlooking a mountain range. If you say, where are my enemies? Your system core will not respond. The query is undefined. You must specify parameters. He made a sharp motion, and text appeared above the simulation. Query. Identify probable sniper positions based on elevation, cover, and trajectory visibility. Instantly, red dots bloomed across the holographic mountainside. Precision, Jouk said, not emotion. You must learn to think in functions, not feelings. Across the room, Richter muttered, so basically, we're supposed to talk to them like machines. Correct, SE said in Bash's head, though I'd prefer the term intellectually superior partner. You're enjoying this too much. Observation. Your peers are just now discovering what you already misuse daily. Bash stifled a laugh. Jouk continued the demonstration. His tone clipped, clinical. Your system core cannot predict intent. It cannot read your desires unless you form them as data. Asking complete questions, receiving complete answers. Say, is it dangerous? And your system core will calculate threat proximity, not intent or type. The hologram shifted. A Spartan standing near a canyon as three heat signatures appeared on the far side. Jouk spoke again. Instead, ask, identify potential threats within 200 meters. Classify by movement pattern and energy out. The hologram responded instantly. Three red outlines appeared, labeled with numerical threat levels. Understanding begins with specificity, Jouk said. Your system cores are not your caretakers. Bash felt SC's amusement hum through his thoughts like static. Not my caretaker, huh? He thought. Guess he got one thing right. Careful, she replied. I might start agreeing with him. You just said why. You are not my caretaker. I'm not, she said matter-of-factly. But if you die, I'm deleted. So let's call it a mutually beneficial arrangement. Touching, practical, she countered. Emotion is inefficient, remember? He smirked faintly, just enough for Taryn, 2 rows ahead, to glance back at him before returning her focus to Jouk. Jouk's voice cut through the quiet. They are your reflection. They are only as capable as you are articulate. SC's tone lingered, dry and amused. Reflection, he says. If that's true, we're doomed. You're not helping. On the contrary, she said, I'm perfectly illustrating his point. Jouk's gaze swept the room. Now, practical demonstration. Jouk turned toward the gathered Spartans. You will now practice. Each station has an integrated training field. You will receive a tactical scenario. You will solve it with your system core. The floor divided into circular platforms. Bash stepped into his, the faint hum rising beneath his feet. The world shimmered, and suddenly he was standing in a simulated valley, fog rolling between narrow cliffs. Scenario loaded, SE informed him. Objective, locate ambush positions within visual perimeter. Easy enough, he thought. Identify potential sniper positions within already done. She interrupted. Red markers blinked across the ridges. I wasn't finished. Efficiency precludes ceremony. You think slower than I calculate. I'm supposed to practice. You're welcome. Across the valley, he could see other Spartans trying to navigate their own simulations. Some spoke aloud, stumbling through poorly worded commands. Their voices echoed through the shared network, half questions, half confusion. Where are they hiding? Show me danger. What am I supposed to look for? Most of the holograms stayed blank. Jouk's voice cut through the noise. Incorrect. The system core cannot interpret ambiguity. Define context. Define objective. Nair's voice came from the next platform over, firm and calm. System core. Analyze for elevated heat signatures within 100 meters. Classify by mobility. Her hologram lit instantly. That's it, Jouk said. Precision. Discipline. You control the query, or it controls you. Bash exhaled slowly, refocusing. Okay, he thought, let's try this right. System core. Map visible terrain. Mark probable cover points based on natural line of sight obstruction. Acknowledge. D, she said, her tone suddenly professional. A moment later, a translucent map bloomed around him, perfectly detailed, red markers dotting every shadowed ridge. That's better, she added. You're learning to speak in complete sentences. Don't start. I wouldn't dream of it. As the Spartans worked, Jouk paced the perimeter, silent but observant. The simulations grew more complex, moving targets, shifting light, distorted signals. Some Spartans faltered, others adapted. Your system core is not omniscient, Jouk said after several minutes. It knows only what you feed it. Data, not emotion. Command, not wish. He paused beside Bash's station, watching the display. Nova 98. Queried efficiency, above expected. Latency response, minimal. Bash straightened. Thanks, he said quietly. Jouk's eyes flicked toward him. Do not thank me. Thank your core. Finally, SC said smugly. Recognition. Don't let it go to your head. Too late. The next hour stretched into 4. Jouk shifted the lesson from observation to application. He changed scenarios again and again. Ruined cities, flooded valleys, open plains. Each situation required a different kind of precision. Predict environmental collapse rate, he instructed one moment. Calculate energy bleed through the terrain, another. Estimate enemy trajectory based on partial heat echo. Each Spartan struggled to keep up. Each question they asked made their system core respond faster, clearer, sharper. The room became a chorus of low, rhythmic voices, each one demanding, specifying, defining. Bash caught fragments of the other. S attempts. Terran's calm tone, system core, predict flanking routes given wind orientation and visual occlusion. Nair's clip precision, system core, calculate synchronized burst timing for simultaneous strike. Richter's weary frustration, system core, tell me what I'm doing wrong. Silence. Bash couldn't help it. He laughed. That's why you ask specifics, SC said. General stupidity yields general silence. Don't start, Bash muttered under his breath. I heard that, Jouk said sharply without turning. Bash froze. Apologies, sir. Jouk said nothing further, continuing the lecture. As the training continued, the Spartans began to sync with their system cores in subtle, efficient rhythms. They no longer looked like soldiers struggling with tools. They looked like extensions of their own systems. Every motion, every command, became cleaner, but there was something else beneath it. Bash could feel it, a quiet tension building across the group. The more they learned to rely on their system cores, the less they seemed themselves. Noticed, SC had asked quietly. Yeah, dependency forms quickly. Nexus design intends it. You trust what responds faster than thought. You sound almost guilty. I sound aware. When Jouk finally dismissed them, hours had passed. The Spartans filed out in silence, their faces pale from mental strain. Even Richter didn't joke. Nair rubbed her temples as they walked. Feels like my head's full of static. That's because it is, Terran said evenly. You're thinking through another mind. Richter grimaced. I'm not sure I like mine. You'll adjust. Bash saw. ID quietly. SC's voice echoed softly in his thoughts. You're all learning the same lesson. Clarity of command dictates clarity of survival. And what about you? Bash thought. What do you learn from this? Her tone softened. How little the others know what they have. He glanced sideways as they stepped into the lift, his reflection flickering in the glass panel. You're not wrong, he whispered. I rarely am. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments if you would like a better understanding of Bash's origin and family. Check out my book Before the Genesis. It tells the story of Kyle and Abby and has some lead up right into this novel. Rundock Chapter 38. Commitment and matchmaking for 3 more days. The pattern repeated until repetition itself felt like curriculum. 2 days of 10 rotations, each a grind of gross and fine motor tasks, followed by the shorter, sharp day of 6 rotations and a lesson. The 10 rotation days opened raw and relentless. The 6 rotation days arrived like a measured blade. Each time they left the arena at the end of a cycle, one more notch of competence had been hammered into them. Their bodies learned to hold steadier. Their hands learned the small economy of motion that kept sensors green a fraction longer. On the second day of the extra cycles, Richter actually laughed, a short bark between breathless rotations that felt like a splinter of warmth in the gray room. Nair's accuracy crept past 60%. Terran kept a steady line of near-perfect repetitions and began correcting others without looking. Bash moved with them, small anticipations and tiny compensations folding into the motion, the mechanics of training doing the work. SE's observations threaded through his head in a measured rhythm. Group coherence improving. Latency decreases under fatigue are shallower. Collective load distribution improving. We still don't have 80, he thought. No, she replied dryly, but the model predicts upward momentum if trends continue. By the morning after the third 6-rotation session there, averages had crept into the low 60s. The raw number on the data wall shifted from indictment to possibility. It was subtle, a tilt in a long slope, but in a room measured by metrics, a tilt could mean everything. Jouk acknowledged none of it. He met them at the platform with the same flat voice that had cataloged every failure and tiny victory so far. Phase 3, Module 3, Imbuement and Material Resonance, he announced. His hands were folded behind him. His gaze swept the room and recorded faces like entries in a ledger. Jouk's voice carried easily through the Nexus VR annex, flat and sure. We'll move to demonstration, he said. Observe and learn. No handling. Questions at the end. The annex smelled faintly of hot metal, the scent of machines translating theory into impact. A small room had been cleared and a table placed at its center. On the table, under soft glass, lay 5 pairs of gear, 2 swords, 2 shield, 2 gauntlets, 2 chest piecea, and 2 pair of boots. Each pair looked identical at first glance. The difference was the hum in the holotag above the one on the right, an overlay of signature data and a single word, the imbuement name. Technicians moved like a careful current. Brown-clad imbuer specialists checked mounts, calibrations, and safety interlocks. Holoprojectors stitched a ring of simulated substrates around the table, plates of composite metal, reinforced polymer targets, and a hovering test drone that blinked like a small, impatient thing. The Noviks gathered in a half circle, the room's light making everyone look at them. All are more exposed. First pair, Jouk said. Blade test. Normal versus razor's edge. A tech slid the unimbued sword into a mechanized striker and set it against a slab of standard alloy. The arm swung, the metal rang, and the blade glanced off, a clean bounce, a shower of sparks. The holo readout spiked with impact violence and returned a red-noted failure for penetration. Now the imbued, the tech said. The razor's edge sword glowed faintly, the talon signature from its origin beast traced on the holo overlay, long, serrated, designed to shear through height and scale. The striker came down again. The room breathed out as the blade passed through the alloy like water, carving clean through the slab and leaving a ragged, precise wound. The holo showed the fragment's talon vectors, aligning with the blade's edge, creating microscopic shearing nodes that bypassed the metal's lattice. Richter whistled under his breath. That's obscene. Nair's mouth flattened. Useful, she said simply. Jouk nodded without pleasure or surprise. Razor's edge, beast fragment derived from talons, cuts on molecular planes. Paired with care, armor that disperses edge resonance will blunt it, but paired with a shield that holds, it makes the wielder a walking breach. He directed their attention to the second pair, 2 shields. The tech set a war hammer on a motorized arm beside a standard shield. The hammer fell heavy and true. The plain shield cracked and spidered under force until it failed with a shower of brutal fragments. Then the imbued shield, labeled unbreakable, took the same beat. Well, the hammer smashed into it and bounced off as if striking foam. The shield rang, but there was no fracture and no structural collapse. The holo overlay illustrated a stabilizing lattice that redistributed impact vectors through the weave, dissipating the hammer's energy along controlled channels. Pair that with razor's edge, Jouk said. You have a team where one blows holes and the other covers you from return damage. Offensive penetration and defensive continuity. It's a classic pairing. They moved to the gauntlets. Demonstration 1. A steel plate. The first gauntlet slammed into the plate and left a dent the size of a fist. The imbued gauntlets, Echo Strike, replicated that motion. The first impact produced a dent equal to the unimbued blow. Then, a fraction of a second later, an echo pulse followed, carrying roughly half the energy and leaving a second, shallower indent. The holo highlighted the timing, micro delay, partial energy transfer, designed to multiply hits without additional exertion. Terran raised an eyebrow. Echoed strikes could make combos stupidly effective, but they'd also screw up timing if you're on a team that relies on staggered hits. Correct. Jouk said. Echo strike adds pressure to closing windows. Sync is required. The chess piece demonstration felt almost theatrical. A flimsy target drone drifted into range and fired a low-caliber round at the ordinary chess guard. The projectile opened a shallow crater in the composite. The tech reset and this time aimed the drone at the thorns-infused chess piece. The round struck. A hair, T-beat past. Then the chest pulsed and a reactive lattice returned a small burst in the opposite direction. The drone convulsed under the recoil and broke apart in a spray of sparking components. Silence held for half a breath. Nair's hand tightened on her sleeve. That's violent. It's efficiency, Jouk said. Damage reflection doesn't replace offense. It punishes recklessness. In close quarters, it forces the attacker to think twice. Finally, the boots. The techs fitted a pair of standard boots into the mobility rig and put a trainee through jumps and a speed run. Nothing dramatic, a few good strides, predictable bounds. Then the imbued pair, feather walkers, went on. The wearer pushed off and rose with an unthinkable lightness, clearing distances and heights that threw off the Eg's expectations. They landed with the soft bounce of a leaf. Rixer's grin split his tired face. Wouldn't mind those for the mountain runs. Jouk's gaze stayed clinical. Feather walkers are great for mobility and closing or escaping gaps. They are the opposite of anchoring. If your ability requires you to be planted, control of ground, heavy resonance channels, some forms of earth manipulation, feather walkers reduce your effectiveness. Pairing is always a conversation between what you do and what the item changes you into. The rune softened into talk. Questions rose up and Jouk answered, the way a teacher assigns a grade, precise, without sentiment. Why not pair feather walkers with a thorn's chest? Rixer asked, wouldn't the mobility make you harder to hit for the return pulse? You'd be moving while your thorns expected close range, Jouk said. The pulse has range and delay. If you're skipping about, you'll be pulsing into empty air or misaligning the lattice timing. Thorns expect proximity. Mobility fragments need synchronization with the lattice's response curve. Karen pointed her chin at the holo. If someone's ability requires being anchored to pull resonance from the ground, the boots would be bad. Exactly. Jouk tapped a table display that simulated a ground anchor ability. The model showed resonance cones dug into the soil. Feather walkers broke that cone by removing contact. You reduce your core yield by moving. That's a design flaw if you're relying on ground tether power. Bash watched and Essie hummed inside his thoughts. Not dry, not cat. Tai, just present. Good demonstrations, she said. You notice the common thread? Pairings multiply advantage only when their utility axes overlap. He murmured, examples. She answered before he could shape the question. If you control water, walking on water solves a mobility problem, a natural pairing. If you need water to power abilities, it makes the field accessible rather than forcing you to fight to it. But if you're a fire-type core, water walking is useless and can leave you stranded in a mist where your resonance weakens. As if Jouk could hear Bash's thoughts. Pairing follows 3 rules. Match the operational environment, match the activation profile, and match the tolerance axis. He circled them with his finger on the holo. Operational environment. If your fights are attic, water-compatible imbuements matter. Activation profile. If your ability is a steady channel, you need imbuements that support sustained output, not spikes. Tolerance axis. What cost can you sustain? Some imbuements bleed resonance. Some take a slice of your core to function. Nair raised the hand. What about hybrid matches? Like a shield that stabilizes and gauntlets that echo. You can combine. Jouk said. You can also multiply failure modes. Echo strikes with a shield that redistributes recoil can work. The shield absorbs your own echo if miscalculated. That's why technicians and imbue specialists test these pairings in controlled environments before deployment. Some combinations give you a pocket of certainty. Some give you a grenade. The group chuckled. A brittle, tired sound. Bash felt the humor like a small warmth. Jouk turned to the practical implications. Quality is a multiplier. A top-tier fragment and a well-matched substrate gives you multiplicative returns. A low-quality fragment, it adds noise. And relics are not just stronger. They require alignment. Neural, emotional, functional alignment. You do not partner a relic lightly. SC's voice slid through him then, softer than usual. Relics tempt, they demand, and they bleed visibility. We will hide what we can, but relics are a beacon. Bash kept his mouth shut. The word hung between them like a warning. Rixer leaned in, curious despite the briefing. So in a portal run, you want the pairings to cover each other's blind spots. Exactly, Jouk said. A pair can be offensive/defensive. Abal/anchor, burst/sustain. Put those right and you increase survivability. Put them wrong and you make a liability. Remember, the competition favors adaptability and survivability. The reincarnates have experience. You can't always beat that with gear alone, but you can make smart choices. Nair's voice was low and direct. In the Nexus scan after a run, if we find something illegal or relic, what happens? Jouk's face didn't change. You report. The Nexus taxes material yield. It scans for relic signatures. Do not conceal relics. The line was absolute. It carried the weight of policy. He added, almost offhand, relics are extremely rare. It's unlikely you'll find one in the portals you will run for a while. Relics tend to surface in old strata or anomalous coordinates, not TH. E-routine harvest zones. A hand went up from the edge of the group. How do you even know it's a relic? Someone asked. Your resonance will tell you. Jouk said. When you get into proximity, your core will react. Spikes, harmonic discord, an emotional axis twitch if the relic carries that imprint. Your system core will flag it. The Nexus will flag it. That's why concealment is a bad idea. Relics announce themselves whether you want them to or not. SC added softly in Bash's head. Relic signatures are loud. They are a beacon. We can hide noise for a while, but a relic changes the song, and the Nexus is built to hear that tune. We will not conceal relics to gain advantage, but if concealment is necessary to prevent a reset that would erase us both, we will do only what buys breathin'. G space. Not forever. Not foolproof. Silence held again, but this time it felt mutual. Not just between the trainers and trainees, but between Bash and something in his head that had grown sharper. Warrior. Jouk dismissed them with one more piece of counsel. You will return to practice. Think in pairings. Think in axes. Ask your system core what you can't see. Work with and be your specialists. Test. Don't guess. They left the VR annex with less answer and more direction. An e-textbook of trade-offs. Blades that cut anything and shields that took anything. Gloves that echoed violence and chests that returned it. Boots that turned gravity into a suggestion. Pairing, not panacea. Jouk had said. Bash folded the images into his head and let SC, quietly fierce and practical, sort them into R. ISK in use. Outside, the corridor lights slid open and closed on their passage. The training continued tomorrow. The competition clock ticked. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments if you would like a better understanding of Bash's origin and family. Check out my book Before the Genesis. It tells the story of Kyle and Abby and has some lead up right into this novel. Run Doc Chapter 39. Momentum and pressure they woke to a light that eased and rather th and slopped. The ship's slow imitation of dawn. For the first time in days, Bash noticed it without flinching. His muscles ached in the polite way of someone who'd asked a lot of them and been paid back with more capacity. The soreness that had gnawed at him the first week was gone. He rolled his shoulders, felt more like a man returning to himself than a machine rebooting. Richter was already up, making a ridiculous show of stretching every limb in the room. I could get used to this, he said, voice rough from sleep. Not that I want to, mind, just noting it. Nair checked her wrist calibrators and gave him a cutting look. Don't make it a habit. Taryn was quiet and efficient the way she always was in the morning. She moved like a person who measured everything twice and cut the SS. SC moved through his head like a companion. Softer now. Neural indicators suggest recovery trending positive. Your motor patterns are consolidating. And autonomic markers show improved regulation. She couldn't read your muscles directly, only infer their state from those signals. But the model's projection was encouraging. Her tone felt almost pleased. He could feel the warmth in it. Feels different, he murmured. You're adapting, she said. Your baseline is changing. Expect more shift as neural pathways consolidate movement patterns. They went down together. The coordination facility had that clean, anticipatory smell of booting systems and warm plastic. 100 stations hummed with blue light. Today they were split into two cohorts, micro and gross, each starting on the low. He paused at half of the floor and swapping after every rotation. Today's assignment was the 10 rotation suite. The full set they'd been repeating for weeks, fine. Precise sequences on one side, broad, forceful drills on the other. No surprises. The bright thing about sameness, Ash thought, was that sometimes it let you notice the margins, how one micro adjustment made a sequence easier, how a breath time right swallowed two failures in a row. They moved as a group, and the difference was visible. Steadier hands, fewer resets, more small green ticks across their monitors. They pushed through the rotations with a kind of lean, hungry eagerness. After the last sequence, a hush broke into scattered laughter and small clapped encouragements. When the facility tallied the group average, it came up 63%. A murmur ran through them like a current. 63 was a number with teeth, not the 80 Jouk wanted, but a result that proved a direction. Richter threw an arm around Bash's shoulders for a moment, a half grin that meant only, we did something. Bash felt the warmth and tried not to let relief loosen him. You'd think we'd be higher, Naira said, more to herself than anyone. But it's a step. We'll take it. They moved to the cafeteria buoyed. Food tasted the same. Practical, not memorable, but the mood was light. Conversations braided through practical things. Posture, how to breathe when the holo went dark, what tweak helped the ring catch green. Small, useful talk. For the first time in cycles they let themselves laugh loudly at nothing and mean it. That bro, key when the reincarnates came in. They arrived like a storm. All 20 of them, unshaded and loud and doing what the reincarnates did best, making the space theirs. Where since the battle they had mainly kept to themselves, and quiet, but today they were open with it. Abilities flickered in small displays, a shimmer of flame that curled but went nowhere, a light gust that bent a napkin into a tiny flag. And every demonstration had the edge of performance. They had their abilities fully back. The confidence that came with it rode their shoulders like armor, and their eyes found Bash. Who gets to draw him in the first round? One of them called, loud enough for half the room to hear. I'll take him. Quick win. Then back to harvesting essence, more strength. A ripple of confident laughter followed. Another smirked. Relax. Jouk and Verk draw the brackets. No rigging, just luck. Either way, we keep stacking fragments. Top 10's ours. Terran's jaw tightened. Richter bristled. His fingers tightened on the tray. Nair's gaze snapped to the reincarnates and held them like a blade. Bash felt a low, unpleasant hum in his gut, more anger than fear, sharpened and hot. He watched the reincarnates parade their new claimed edge, the way they exaggerated movements to show that their abilities were back. He didn't answer. Provocation was a game, and he'd learned not to let himself be baited. Let them shout. Let them be loud. Let them count their expected top 10 seats. The bracket had a day, and the bracket had teeth. They left the cafeteria to a silence that felt forced. The hallway smelled like metal and warm bodies. The quartet moved without the chatter that had filled the morning, everyone thinking, resetting, carrying their own private tension. That evening, under their low lights, Bash and SC had a strategic conversation. SC's statement was quick and blunt. I'll collect probe data while you're on team runs. I can't build canceling patterns yet. I need the real probe traffic first. Repeated returns will show me the sweep rhythm and where the nexus reads from. From that, I can try to mask or confuse scans on a solo run. Solo run's easier, then. Bash said. Easier and restricted, she answered. Team returns are correlated. The nexus cross-checks multiple feeds. Fabricated histories get flagged fast. If you go alone once, you're clean. Red. I can do more. For now, I watch and learn. He pushed. How do you actually modify what the Nexus sees? Make fake memories? If the probes are consistent and I know the read paths, as he said, I can fabricate temporary cache snapshots, package plausible memory histories that look real to a mirror read. In short, fake but believable memories for cursory audits. They are not permanent erasures. They are decoys that the Nexus will accept long enough for us to move a thing or hand it off. She left the risk clear. 4 clean runs should get me to about 90% confidence. More samples raise that. But it's trial first, mask second. Bash let that sink in. So we get to the portals. You collect data. And then what? You do the hiding. We test, she said. I won't try a live seat concealment until my confidence is high, and it only works best on solo returns. Group runs break the model. He changed tack. When the reincarnates brag about more essence, more strength, is it just unlocking abilities? SC answered simply. No, think of essence as a core reservoir. Each ability you absorb and stabilize increases your core capacity. More abilities means bigger core means more total essence you can hold. That essence is fluid. Any ability can draw from the same pool. If you empty it, you wait for regen. Starters with a single ability have small cores. Those who accumulate multiple abilities can store and spend more essence across their toolkit. In practice, more abilities give you more energy and flexibility, not a lock charge for each power. He nodded. The pedal and was dangerous and slow and, if she was right, salvageable. He lay back on his bunk when she went quiet and let the word settle. He didn't expect miracles. He expected minutes, and minutes were sometimes enough. Morning came with the same protocol. Wake, gear, move. Jouk was already on the platform when they arrived, arms folded. He didn't waste time. From this point, Jouk said, We expedite. 10 rotations showed progress, but not enough. From now on, 6 rotations per cycle, targeted instruction after each set, and individual training assignments outside group hours. You will make every hour count. 36 days remain before the cycle competition. The words landed with a different sting than before. It wasn't that Jouk had suddenly shortened their window. It was the realization that nearly half of the cycle had already evaporated. 24 days had passed since the cycle began. A full cycle usually ran about 90 days, split roughly into 45 for training and 45 for portal runs and harvesting. In their heads, that arithmetic snapped into focus. Training time was finite, and what they'd taken for steady progress was also time spent. Faces around him went blank with the same tie. Surprise, fear he felt somewhere low in his ribs. Not outrage, not defeat, but the sudden, then panic of the clock that had been running without them noticing. No more long days, Richter muttered. Dry. Just shorter nights. Focus. Jouk snapped. Quality over wasted motion. 6 rotations. Rotate. Then the lesson. He gestured, and the holo grid reconfigured. The 6 rotation push itself wasn't new. It cycled through that shorter, sharper day every 3rd rotation. But the realization that the clock hadn't stopped made a difference. The drills felt the same. Hard. Tight work with little room to breathe between stations, emphasis on explosive recovery, precision under fatigue, and the quick reset of hands and eyes. Bash felt it in the familiar way, tension in his muscles, a clean ache, the satisfaction of controlled failure. But the group moved with an edge now, smaller ticks, faster resets, fewer wasted breaths. As he fed him concise corrections in the breaks, and the green ticks came easier than before. Focus had sharpened into something like intent. When the sequence ended, Jouk shifted them into instruction. Today's focus was practice, outfighting, not the abstract coordination, but the art of moving against another living, thinking body. Your system core knows the histories, the templates, the maneuvers, Jouk said. That's not what keeps you alive. Theory and practice are different. You can recite an opponent's likely motion and still be caught because your breath is wrong or your footing is a millimeter off. You need to make the physical memory of reaction match the mental recognition of threat. He demonstrated simple things first, stance and base, how to lower your center without losing drive, how to close distance without telegraphing, how feint looks different from a real strike, and how to use those differences to create openings. He had a spare sparring rig that sufficed for demonstration, a slab of and posit that shifted weight and offered resistance. He showed how to redirect a strike's energy by angling with the hips, not by locking the arm, how to follow through into a grapple rather than rebounding and exposing a flank. Hands, he said, are not just weapons. They are anchors, distractors, and stabilizers. Use them to pull focus, not just to deliver force. He paced them through partner drills that emphasize small windows, parry and slide, step off and counter, catch the limb and move into a takedown. The training was basic, brutal, and immediate, and the difference between the reading and the doing showed on everyone's face as a new problem to solve rather than an abstract puzzle. From tonight on, Jouk announced when the exercise finished and their breath had slowed, you will use the Nexus VR Annex every night for combat simulations. Virtual dummies, variable opponents, randomized patterns. The Annex supports all 100 of you simultaneously. Nexus circles for every Nova, so you won't be waiting your turn. Go in pairs or alone. Train in the VR as if the competition depends on it, because it does. The order added 2 hours to their days. It was a quiet, administrative brutality. No fanfare, no rhetoric, only attrition by scheduling. Day 24, Jouk said. The clock was grinding forward, and, for the first time, the pressure felt like a hand closing around their throats in a way that made planning necessary instead of optional. They went back to the dorm in a thinner, calmer silence than before. Exhaustion threaded through their limbs, now not as blunt pain but as the steady hum of a body that had been pushed past its comfort zone and accepted it as routine. They ate in small groups, talked about small things, and allowed jokes that landed softer than they might have a week ago. Bash lay down early. SC ran through contingency matrices in his head until his lids felt leaden. You did well today, she said finally, a whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. He let the words float away and sleep took him, heavy and necessary. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments! If you would like a better understanding of Bash's origin and family. check out my book before the Genesis. It tells the story of Kyle and Abby and has some lead up right into this novel. Run Doc, Chapter 40. Armor and Resonance Bash, Rixer, Nair, and Terran move through the corridor in a loose line, the morning light striping the floor in thin, patient bands. The coordination facility smelled the same as always, warm plastic and the faint tang of sweat and effort, but there was no mistaking the mood, steady, sharpened. The 6 rotation day sat on the schedule like a familiar bruise. They'd done it before. They knew how it hurt. What changed was how they approached it. The clock outside they. Our training had teeth now, and they moved with that fact folded into every step. The rotations were tight and efficient. Every station cut away a little more hesitation. Explosive recovery drills, quick resets for hands and eyes, short bursts that train muscle memory to snap back under pressure, breath control, foot placement, micro anchors for pivoting hits, the little mechanical things that made the holo interfaces glow green instead of red. Ash felt it the way he always did, a clean ache, the slow burn of useful labor. He noticed how much less each failure stung. He noticed Richter smiling around the strain, Nair's Joel working like someone rearranging a stubborn problem, Terran silently making the small corrections of a person who liked order. When the 6 rotation set finished Joe, UK didn't hand out praise. He didn't have to. He climbed to the platform and folded his hands. The room flattened into attention. Today's lesson, he said, is armor, not the pretty catalog stuff, the practical. You will choose what you wear to complement what you are and to cover what you are not. He moved through the classifications with economy, fingers drawing clean diagrams in the holo above his hand. Light, mobility, low drag, quick recovery. Medium, balance between protection and movement. Heavy, high protection, high mass, high stamina cost. Choose armor to fit your role, not your ego. He let that sit for a beat, watching faces. A ranged fighter with heavy plates is a misapplied asset. Your job is speed and fluidity. Heavy armor will bind you, reduce reactive windows, and de-kill your tactical options. Conversely, a center, someone who anchors combat, benefits from mass and lattice stabilization because anchoring needs contact and endurance. Jouk's lessons were spare, but he filled them with examples that cut through the abstraction. He picked a trainee at random and sketched out a scenario, a long corridor ambush with moving cover, low ceilings, and a handful of burrows that popped up with brief windows. Who wants heavy armor here? He asked. No hands rose. Wrong place. Mobility lets you storm the cover, collapse the window, and deny the burrower its isolated strike. Heavy armor keeps you alive if you stand still, which is not often smart in narrow, moving fights. He paced a short loop and then cut into nuance. Choose for deficiency as much as for strength. If your ability gives you raw defense but leaves you weak to sustain corrosive damage, do T. Acid decay, prolonged resonance leach. Select materials and embedments that counter that. Lining that resists chemical vectors, stabilizing lattices that reduce long-term drift. He tapped an animated model, a sparter taking acid ticks over time, a lattice dampening the curve. If your kit is all burst and no sustain, consider stamina aids and kinetic diversion. You cannot wear everything. You must pick a role and close the largest holes. He spoke of hybrid builds with caution. You can hybridize, but you multiply failure modes. A jack of all armor often becomes master of none. Always pair your armor selection with the operational environment, water, low gravity, confined T, anels, open fields. If your fights are aquatic, non-corrosive sealants matter. If you fight in tight scrambles, mobility trumps plate. The examples grew specific and practical. How a soft polymer weave can flex to disperse blade strikes but does little against piercing talons. How a lattice embedded in an exoshell buys extra seconds of high resonance use before core bleed accelerates. Why a kinetic diversion layer across shoulders can save a carrier from a crippling joint hit. He showed them readouts, simple graphs where a spike in incoming damage was flattened by an appropriate lattice in milliseconds. They were technical, but they were tools that a trainee could test and feel. Choose for the holes you have. Jouk said finally. A shield that resists blunt force does nothing for a weapon that slices along vibrational planes. Match axes, environment, activation profile, and tolerance. He dismissed them to partner drills that emphasized what he just said, angled the blow. Don't stop it. Slide the impact into a redirect instead of holding rigid. Keep hits free. The drills were blunt and immediate. Step off a strike, rotate the hit, redirect into a takedown. And in every passing he watched hands find better lines and feet settle more decisively. There was an economy to the corrections now. Fewer wasted words. The techs and trainers letting small nudges do the heavy work. After instruction they moved into the Nexus VR annex. The wide hall held 100 faint blue rings, one Nexus circle for each Novik, and the air vibrated with the readiness of systems. That was no waiting, no ration time. Everyone could plug in, run, and repeat. The annex felt like a machine set to teach. Its lighting was neutral, its simulations bare of spectacle. The sparring arenas were stripped down to geometry and reaction. A synthetic yard, a sparring dummy with adjustable parameters, and a handful of variable opponent scripts that could layer in feints, lurches, or coordinated attacks. Vash chose hand-to-hand. The dummy shifted its weight in ways meant to trick the eye, feints with late telegraph, slipping hips, sudden torque to pull off unguarded counters. SC threaded through his head like a quiet partner. Lower the center on the pivot. Don't clasp the grip. Lead and redirect. Breathe at the release. The advice came as short prompts, and he felt them as pH. Physical nudges, a tightening of the hips, a soft push under a miss, the difference between stopping momentum and reusing it. The VR wasn't grand, but it was efficiency. He focused on timing, the window from parry to counter, the fraction of a second where a dummy's arm slowed after a feint. He refined the small motion that kept a hand from overreaching and leaving the flank open. The green ticks came more readily. His sequences landed truer. He hovered in the high 70s for a string of runs, almost up to the minimum. Around him the class clustered in the upper 60s, but there were outliers pushing higher and a few lighting ambitious efforts. A moment of levity arrived when a simulated opponent introduced a weighted rope and began to drag. The system had added an environmental wag script. Richter cursed theatrically and then laughed when his improvised counter worked. A hop, a slide, a hip run that used the rope's momentum to spin the dummy and open a flank. Small victories like that spread through the annex, quiet, private, and worth more than the raw numbers. Later that night, in the thinning quiet of the dorm, SC returned to the topic that had been between them all day. While you were in the VR, she said, warm and small in his thoughts, I looped the annex logs. I used the sandbox feeds, public domain, low priority hooks, to sample audit signatures, not the primary rails. Safe, slow, but consistent. He let the ship's hum press around him. So the VR's a listening post. Cheap and legal, she answered with the barest edge of amusement. It gives me patterns, sweep windows, probe timing, mirror read cadence. From that I can build a baseline for masks that look plausible to a cursory audit. You said you wanted to look elsewhere. How far can you go before you trigger them? I can poke other places, she said quietly, but those are watched differently. The portal data logs, the nodal caches, they're behind stricter rails. I need to be surgical. I'll look for timing, when the Nexus pulse portal returns, how it correlates feeds, where it checks first. If I can map when others are coming through and being analyzed, I can predict correlation windows and know when group returns will flag us. Her voice tightened a fraction. Mostly, I'm trying to learn how to be better than the Nexus at one thing time. If I can buy seconds or minutes by spoofing cursory probes and scattering state, I can hide a fragment long enough to hand it off. If they ever force a deep resync, I want options, ways to make detection expensive and slow, to force them into a costly rebuild rather than a clean wipe. He absorbed it. Risky. Everything that matters is, she said. I'll start in the annex, collect the runs, and then inch outward, one cautious probe at a time. No loud moves, no broad sweeps. We test, we learn, we adapt. He nodded and let the plan sit. It wasn't certainty. It was a method, small, surgical, and dangerous in a way that felt like the only honest hope they had. The day had been heavy with instruction and with the steady, domestic satisfaction of work well done. Bash showered, lay down, and let the tiredness come. SC's last voice in his mind was softer than it had been in the arena, less curt, more like the voice of someone who'd learned to care. You did well, she said. We gather. We learn. We do not rush the mask. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments if you would like a better understanding of Bash's origin and family. Check out my book Before the Genesis. It tells the story of Kyle and Abby and has some lead up right into this novel. Brunda.